Hello, David here at merchantaccounts.ca. Today we're going to talk about picking a payment processor, hopefully a good one. We're going to talk about the most helpful tips and things that I can think of that you should watch out for when choosing what we hope will become a good credit card processor for your business. Stay tuned, we'll dig in 1 second. We're going to start with rates as we most often do. Rates are the first thing that most people think about for very obvious reasons. However, the pricing model that you get is really important because if you're not on a good pricing model, if you get a good sounding rate, but you're on a pricing model that doesn't actually provide what you're being promised, you might get promised something that sounds really low, but it's not. You want to be on interchange plus pricing or a flat pricing model where your rate does not fluctuate. We have a lot of other content on the channel about the different pricing models. So if you're going to seek out a quote and you aren't familiar with interchange, review some of that content. You can't negotiate effectively if you don't know what's fair and what the cost to the payment processor may be. It also helps because you don't want to have unrealistic expectations. If you don't know what's a good thing to or reasonable to go for, like maybe you're like, hey, I want my processing fee to be 1.2%, but that's way below the processor's cost. That doesn't help either. Now, this video isn't specifically about pricing, and I don't want to go too deep into that topic, but please do review our content on pricing specific topics because it helps you negotiate effectively. With that, I'm on to the next section. So the next section is about, or the next tip is about security reserves or holdbacks. Now, if you have a McDonald's franchise and you sell burgers, you know people get their food within like a minute because that's their claim to fame. And somebody's very unlikely to think about the burger that they got a year ago and then do a chargeback a year later. It's just not realistic. But that doesn't apply to all businesses. If you're a contractor that does commercial roofing, the deposit might be paid way in advance of the work. And then after the job's done, it might not rain for another 2 months if you're in the heat of summer and a place doesn't get a lot of rain. But my point is, with some types of merchants, disputes, if they were to occur, don't happen right away. And the way that it works is, and by the way, when I'm talking about a dispute, I'm talking about a chargeback. That's where a card holder contacts their bank and says, hey, I paid for something, I didn't get what I was promised, I want you to forcibly reverse this transaction. The relevant point is that when that occurs, the cardholder has to get their money back. The payment processor has to immediately return the money to the cardholder. And if they can't recoup the money from the merchant, the payment processor is on the hook. And the way that that's addressed is through security reserves. Some businesses could get a lot of chargebacks, and if those chargebacks pile up and the company's not able to have the financial wherewithal to return the money back to the cardholder, the processor is on the hook. This is, generally speaking, why security reserves exist. But in the world of payment processing, not all businesses are equal. That McDonald's franchise basically has no security reserve because there's no realistic future delivery risk. So if you have the type of business that there is chargeback risk, if you can see it from the processor's perspective, hey, we do big tickets, it's not done for a while, or our delivery window, like maybe like a cruise ship where people are booking their cruise way in advance, yeah, things could go wrong. Maybe the cruise ship breaks down, people can't go on the cruise. If you are the type of business that might have a security reserve, you want to ask some questions. Is your type of business something that the processor would normally need a security reserve for? And very importantly, will that reserve be reduced over time? And by the way, it should. You should be able to get that commitment and get it in writing. Now, they won't say that it'll come down on this day, but what they should say is if you keep your company running and it's in good financial shape, like you're not taking losses, and your chargebacks are not out of control, you're in good shape, we should be willing to do a review, usually at 6 months or a year. And you can even look for a commitment like, if I have almost no chargebacks and I'm in good financial shape, could we reduce the holdback from 10% of sales to 5% of sales after 6 months, and then 5% to eliminate it completely after a year? You'll probably get some pushback, like, yes, we'll need to do a review at that time, but it shows their appetite and willingness. It's very important to point out. And just for a quick aside here, in fairness to the processor, if something changed about your business and it wasn't doing any very well or chargebacks were out of control, don't expect your reserve to come down. Ultimately, the point is, if you run a good, clean show, you ask the right questions up front, and even if you do get a security reserve, it's not a problem that you should have to live with forever, and you want to make sure the processor that you're working with is going to be fair to you and treat you right when you get to that point. The next point are rate increases. You should ask your potential processor what their policy is around rate increases. You know what that policy should be? We don't do rate increases. Most processors do rate increases, and I'm strongly of the position that it's very unethical to do so, outside of fringe, very rare edge cases. I can think of one merchant we've worked with for a very long time. They're European based, and Visa and MasterCard changed the way that debit cards worked in Europe. And the way that they changed it is the pricing that this merchant was paying at that point in time became lower than our actual cost from Visa and MasterCard. And we explained that to them, and they were very willing to change it because we were being honest, we were being transparent. Hey, this is the problem. And it wasn't a problem. But that's so extraordinarily unlikely. In all our years, over 20 years in business, it's the only time I can ever remember raising a rate on a merchant. Now, and that's only also where a merchant is on flat pricing. If a merchant is on interchange plus pricing, that's where the payment processor says, hey merchant, for every transaction you do, we don't care what card type, we don't care how you do it, we're just going to take whatever the interchange cost is directly from Visa and MasterCard, and we are adding on our processing fee, for example, of 0.25% or something like that. In that case, when interchange costs go up or down, well, the merchant's rate will go up and down according to interchange, but that's completely, again, fair and transparent, completely reasonable. I guess I'm going on at too long of a length here, but they should say very directly that they don't do rate increases. And you want to listen to how they answer that question. They should be willing to put it in writing, and if you can't get it, I suggest finding a different payment processor. The next topic to talk about is merchant support, customer support, problem solving. Generally speaking, in a sales cycle, like at the early stages, that's the honeymoon. They're trying to win your business. Nobody can be more important than you, can't get back to your questions quickly enough. However, once you've signed that contract, the honeymoon's over. A few months on, what is life like? Do those people still care about your account? Do they still support it? It's really important. And I will say a lot of business owners, not all business owners, but a lot of business owners don't really value support enough until they need it. When people need answers, like they need them now, what is it worth in that moment? But that's too late to start caring about it. So go back to the person who's quoting your account. Ask them, will they remain available as a point of contact for any issues going forward? Will they stay responsive? To every single point I just raised, the answer is they should, even in bigger organizations. Now, I do get that some companies have dedicated sales team and support staff, but really, if you're getting personalized service on the upfront, the sale, but then just like call center, you can't have a dedicated contact afterwards, it doesn't bode that well for ongoing support. To me, I don't like the word support. I like the word relationship or partnership, someone that cares about you and is there and you can rely on. I think that's what you should ask for. You should seek that commitment. You should get it in writing. Another one, an obvious one, is technical features. The problem is I can't go too far down this track because there's so many features. Recurring billing, virtual terminal transactions where you take it over the phone, support for foreign or exotic processing currencies, e-commerce integrations with different shopping cart software. Like, I can't tell you what your needs are, but you need to know what your business needs are today in at least the short and medium term. And you want to make sure that this payment processor can support these things. And I'll give you an example. PCI compliance, how your company handles and touches credit cards. PCI is the payment card industry data security standard, other content on the channel about that, including a podcast where I had a guest on to talk about it. But anyways, if you wanted to make your life easy as possible from a PCI compliance perspective, can this prospective credit card processor support an integration in such a way where you don't have to touch at all credit cards or let even a temporary record of a credit card number touch your server? Don't read too much into this example. It's just a point, but you need to make a list of the things that you really need before you start reaching out to payment processors, because a good processor is going to support everything that you need, and they're going to help make sure, like, they'll complete the picture. It's like, I need this and this and this and this, and they should explain why they can do it, and they should really be guiding you through the process as much as is reasonably possible for a service provider to handle. Oh, and another one, show me the money. When are you going to get paid? Well, it's nice to know what your funding schedule is going to be. Do you want to get paid every day on daily funding? Or do you absolutely hate reconciling? You prefer to do it once a week? You should decide what funding schedule you want and ask them if you can be put on that funding schedule. Oh, and a big one, contracts. Don't get stuck in them. So often overlooked. Don't get locked into a long-term contract. Now, I want to be clear. There's nothing wrong with a long-term contract, especially if you've worked with your credit card processor for an ongoing period of time, and you can use a longer contract to negotiate a rate reduction in exchange for signing that longer contract. However, if you're working with a new service provider, I very strongly urge you, don't get into a locked-in contract. At least if they want a locked-in contract, then seek a clause, hey, look, give me a 6-month window to try you out. I want to know that I have an eject button for the first 6 months. Or better yet, just make it a month-to-month contract. And just as an example, at merchantaccounts.ca, by default, all of our contracts are month-to-month. If a client's worked with us for a while, they want to beat us up on the rate for a little bit, we'll say, hey, are you cool to sign like a 2-year fixed contract? By that point, we know them so well, everybody's happy. But don't do it at the outset. So here it is for the summary. Get good rates. Be on a predictable and well understood pricing model where you're guaranteed to get what you're promised. Don't just get a good rate promised to you. Make sure you actually get to pay the low rate that you got promised. Make sure you have as low a reserve, or ideally no reserve if possible. And if you do have a reserve, get a commitment from how quickly that will be reduced and what you would need to, what your performance would need to be to see that reserve either reduced or ideally eliminated. Again, on the support side, get a commitment for how quickly they respond to support issues. Find out if the salespeople helping you during the setup process will remain available to help you after you start processing to help with any issues that pop up. Make sure that all of your technical requirements, which you need to think about ahead of time, are addressed. Don't get on a locked-in contract. And with that, I think you'll have a pretty decent credit card processor. Or a plug, you could just work with us at merchantaccounts.ca. We work with Canadian, US, European, and UK-based businesses. You can visit us at merchantaccounts.ca. We'd be very happy to jump on a call to talk about your business. But otherwise, I hope this was helpful. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day there. Bye now.